day at these times, only on WION, World is One.
Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Gambhir. Let's get started. The world is at a boiling point, from the unending Russia-Ukraine war to the multiple conflicts raging in West Asia to the increasing worries of a potential Chinese invasion of Taiwan. Now the cross-border attacks between Iran and Pakistan have threatened to open a whole new front of war. They say that when a war breaks out, almost no one goes unaffected. Today, in the Gulf of Aden, the Indian Navy came to the rescue of a cargo vessel under attack. This is how things unfolded. At around midnight, INS Visakhapatnam, deployed in the region for anti-piracy operations, received a distress call from a ship. The SOS call came from a US-owned vessel called MV Genco Picardy. The vessel, with a crew of 22 on board, including 9 Indians, faced a drone attack late on Wednesday night. The ship was just 60 nautical miles south of Port Aden when it came under attack. The Indian Navy swiftly responded, rushing to rescue the vessel. The Indian Navy's bomb experts boarded the ship to inspect the damaged area. They did a thorough inspection and rendered the area safe for further transit. There has been a marked increase in threats to the safety of maritime traffic in a very important part. They have a direct bearing on India's economic interests. And so, as a result, India has deployed warships to the Arabian Sea to maintain a deterrent presence. Today's rescue operation by India comes amid growing concerns over the Houthis stepping up the attacks in the Red Sea. The Indian Navy chief has issued instructions to firmly deal with such maritime incidents. Last month, the Liberian-flagged vessel, which had 21 Indian crew members on board, was also the target of a drone attack off India's west coast. Another commercial oil tanker that was on the way to India came under a suspected drone strike. It happened in the southern Red Sea on the same day. This ship had a team of 25 Indian crew. MV Genco Picardy was transiting through the Gulf of Aden, carrying a cargo of phosphate rock. The shipping company said that there were no injuries to the crew on board, but the vessel itself suffered limited damage to its gangway. And hours later, the US military said its forces conducted strikes on 14 Houthi missiles that presented an imminent threat to merchant vessels and US Navy ships in the region. On Wednesday, the Houthis said that their missiles made a direct hit on the US Genco Pegardi. The Yemen-based Houthi rebels have attacked ships crossing the Red Sea, leading to disruptions in commercial shipping trade routes. They do this in solidarity with the Palestinians, who have come under relentless attack from the Israeli forces. Earlier, they vowed to only attack Israeli ships, but recently they have threatened to expand their attacks to include American ships in response to American and British strikes on their positions. It came on the day Washington returned the Houthis to its list of terror groups. US officials said that the move was aimed at cutting off funding and weapons that Houthis have used to attack as well as hijack ships. Houthi attacks target a route that accounts for about 15% of the world's shipping traffic. It acts as a vital conduit between Europe and Asia. And in response to these attacks, shipping companies have rerouted their ships. The alternative shipping route around South Africa's Cape of Good Hope adds 10 to 14 days to the journey. That is a very costly undertaking. In Europe, big shipping lanes have instructed hundreds of its commercial vessels to stay clear of the Red Sea. While some ships have been ordered to take the long route around Africa, others have paused shipping altogether until safety is restored. And just add to this the weather-related closures and stoppages in Europe, and you get port congestions and delays. You see, the Red Sea maritime crisis is not limited to the Red Sea. It has a ripple effect throughout the business world. Banking executives are worried that the crisis will reignite inflationary pressures. Even war-hit Ukraine is affected. Kiev says that the Red Sea situation had led to a slowdown in its agricultural exports this month. Meanwhile, Italian ports are concerned that they are being bypassed as ships steer away from the Mediterranean route, and as a result, freight rates have more than doubled since early December. Marine insurance rates for war risks have also tripled. According to Reuters, war risk premiums had risen to around 1% of the value of a ship, and the rates, by the way, are expected to move higher. This means hundreds of thousands of dollars of additional costs for a 7-day voyage. Ship owners are wondering, what is cheaper? Paying additional insurance so that the ship can pass the Suez Canal, or take the longer route around Africa and rack up more fuel bills? And that is the cost of war. And as far as India is concerned, the crisis is unfolding in its vicinity. So New Delhi is alert, of course. It's monitoring the situation very closely. Apart from providing protective escorts to the ships, the Indian Navy has responded to the attacks and hijacking attempts in the Arabian Sea. The Indian Navy has also enhanced the deployment of 4 warships and surveillance aircraft in order to ensure maritime security. And that's all a neutral party can do: monitor, stay vigilant, and respond to SOS calls. But what about those who always look for trouble? I'm, of course, talking about India's neighbor, Pakistan. In a tit-for-tat move today, Pakistan has bombed neighboring Iran. It came a little more than 24 hours after Iran conducted missile strikes on terror groups in Pakistan. And this has led to fears that another war could break out at a time of the growing global war. But here on Gravitas, our question remains the same as last night. Can Pakistan really afford it? Can Pakistan really go against Iran, one of the world's most powerful weapons manufacturing countries? Is Pakistan ready to be hostile with 3 neighbors? And before we explore that, here's what happened so far. On Thursday, Pakistan said it used killer drones and rockets to strike militants inside Iran. The Iranian media said several missiles hit a village in the Sistan-Balochistan province that borders Pakistan. 9 people were killed in Pakistan's strikes, including 4 children. Pakistan described the strikes as a series of highly coordinated and specifically targeted precision military strikes against terror hideouts. Its foreign ministry said, and I'm quoting, "A number of terrorists were killed during the intelligence-based operation. The sole objective of today's act was in pursuit of Pakistan's own security and national interest, which is paramount and cannot be compromised. So, how did Tehran respond? Condemning the strikes, Tehran summoned Pakistan's most senior diplomat in Iran to ask for an explanation. Meanwhile, in Islamabad, a foreign ministry spokesperson said Pakistan's caretaker prime minister planned to cut short his visit to the World Economic Forum in Davos, given the situation back at home. According to reports, in fact, the Pakistani military is in a state of extremely high alert. It threatened that it would meet any misadventure from the Iranian side forcefully. But who were the targets of Pakistan's strikes? It was the Baloch Liberation Front, BLF, and its associated Baloch Liberation Army, BLA. The BLF is waging an armed insurgency against the Pakistani state. And why is that? It's because they want freedom from Pakistan, freedom from exploitation. They want greater regional autonomy in Balochistan. The region, after all, has seen decades of insurgency, rich in natural resources like natural gas, oil, copper, gold. Balochistan is one of the least developed provinces in Pakistan. They see Islamabad as an occupier, an exploiter of natural resources. And guess what? They raise the banner of revolt against China as well. That's right. They see Beijing as Islamabad's partner in exploiting their resources, and this is why they want China's BRI out. In fact, the BLF has launched attacks against Chinese citizens and investments in Balochistan. In a separate statement on Thursday, the BLF said it does not have any hideouts in Iran. They said that no BLF fighters had been killed in recent attacks. The BLA has not yet commented publicly on Pakistan's strikes on Iranian territory. Pakistan's retaliatory strikes on Iran came after Tehran attacked bases of another terror group, Jaish al-Adl. Although the two countries have had a rocky past, these strikes are the highest profile cross-border intrusions in recent years, and it comes amid growing worries about the instability in the region. The two neighbors had appeared to be improving ties, with Iran's foreign minister and Pakistan's prime minister meeting at Davos this week. That was before the Iranian strikes on Pakistan. Pakistan's comments after the retaliatory strikes signal Islamabad's desire to keep the row contained. But analysts warn it could get out of hand. There are escalation fears. It's because amid the Israel-Hamas war, Iran has been flexing its muscle in the region. And this is even before the cross-border strikes on Pakistan. Late on Tuesday night, Tehran struck Islamic State sites and Iraq, where it said it had struck an Israeli spy center. Why Iran launched Tuesday's attack still remains unclear. But these strikes mean that both Pakistan and Iran have taken an extraordinary step of ignoring each other's national sovereignty. Which brings us to the question: can it afford to go against Iran? The Iranians, after all, are masters of asymmetric warfare. They have shown a penchant for building an array of weapon systems. It's mainly to counter the adversaries that are better funded and more heavily armed. Pakistan, in fact, has been ranked as the 9th strongest military globally. This is according to the latest assessment by the Global Firepower Index. Meanwhile, Iran holds the 14th rank. And between the two, Pakistan boasts of a formidable military. It has the Army, Air Force, Navy. They have 650,000 active duty personnel, over 1,000 warplanes, including the coveted American-made F-16s. They have submarines, patrol vessels. But Iranian armed forces, being the largest in West Asia in terms of active troops, Iran has 610,000 active duty personnel and an additional 350,000 trained personnel ready for mobilization, over 500 aircraft. 500 aircraft, including domestically produced Sergei and older F-4 Phantoms. The Iranian Navy also has approximately 20,000 active duty personnel. It has a diverse fleet of 67 units, including frigates and submarines. And it's not just about what Pakistan has and does not have in its arsenal. The point is that the situation has come at a sensitive time for Pakistan. The country is still struggling with various challenges. It has a weak caretaker government, to say the least. Its economy is in shambles. And its Chief Justice says drugs and Kalashnikovs have destroyed the country. You heard that right. Let's tell you more about this. On Wednesday, the Pakistan Chief Justice lamented the state of affairs. He noted how Kalashnikovs have become part of everyday life in Pakistan, how the police looks the other way as people keep arms without licenses. He said Pakistan must get rid of the Kalashnikov culture. This is the state of Pakistan. Can it really afford to fight Iran when its own house is on fire? And while one neighbor of India is busy losing the fight to internal struggles, another is busy making short-sighted moves in the Indian Ocean. I am talking about the Maldives under pro-China Mohammad Muizzu. Turning away from its traditional ties with India, the pro-China leadership in the Maldives has just inked a $37 million deal with a Turkish company for military drones. The Maldives plans to use these Turkish military drones to patrol the high seas, a task so far done by India with the Maldivian forces. It's not surprising because ever since the Maldivian president Mohammad Muizzu came to power on his quote-unquote India out campaign, he has asked Indian troops to leave the country. He has in fact given a March 15 deadline for the Indian military personnel in the country to leave. The Indian officers stationed in the Maldives were those who operated and maintained 2 Dhruv advanced light helicopters as well as 1 Dornier aircraft that was gifted to the Maldives National Defence Force by India. Let's not forget, India has also trained the Maldivian military. These India-gifted helicopters were used for the transport of patients from various islands of the archipelago nation to hospitals in Mali. It has saved over 500 lives so far. Meanwhile, the Dornier carried out reconnaissance flights by the Maldivian military against suspicious ships and narcotics trafficking. The Maldives now plans to replace these with Turkish drones, and reports say that the likely candidate will be the Aksungur drones. They are used for maritime operations and surveillance. Under the agreement signed by the Maldivian government with the Turkish company, the money will be paid in installments. Moving on to the Taiwan Strait now. Will it become the next war zone? Is a Chinese attack on Taiwan imminent? What makes me ask that? Well, the developments over the last 24 hours. Let's break it all down for you. You see, last weekend, Taiwan chose Lai Ching-te as the new president. Someone who China hates, just to put it simply. Someone who it has labeled as a separatist. And despite this, there was an eerie calm in the Taiwan Strait. But as it turns out, that was the calm before a storm. China has launched major military patrols in the sensitive region. Here's what's going on. Taiwan has detected at least 24 Chinese Air Force planes. This includes the Su-30 fighters. But detailed information has not been released. Accompanying the aircraft have been 5 PLA Navy vessels. They are operating off northern and central Taiwan, also to the island's southwest. And not just that, in the last 24 hours, 11 of the aircraft have also crossed the Taiwan Strait's median line or the areas close by. At least that is what Taiwan's defense ministry is claiming. It seems that China is trying to intimidate Taiwan. This, by the way, is its largest military maneuver around the island in 3 weeks. This is also its first active response to the election in Taiwan. The dragon is clearly angry. It has issued statements to other governments that congratulated Lai Ching-te on his victory, in fact. The Chinese Foreign Ministry summoned the Philippine ambassador and denounced the Philippine president's congratulatory message to Lai Ching-te. Spokeswoman Mao Ning emphasized that the One China principle is the red line and the bottom line. Listen to this.
The wrong remarks made by the Philippine side seriously violated the One China principle and the joint communique. It seriously breached the political commitments made by the Philippines to China and constituted a flagrant interference in China's internal affairs. The One China principle is the red line and the bottom line. China will never accept any provocations on the Taiwan question and will act resolutely in response.
You see, China has threatened the Philippines to abide by the One China policy. And it's not the only country, by the way, that China is trying to influence. Remember, just a few days back, Nauru severed ties with Taiwan and switched recognition to China. It is the 10th diplomatic ally of Taiwan, which Beijing has managed to flip, all since the DPP came into power. The next few months are going to be even more volatile. And why is that? You see, President-elect Lai Ching-te is going to be formally sworn in the month of May. And in the run-up to that, China is expected to flex its military muscle to intimidate Taiwan further. In fact, days before the election, President Xi Jinping emphasized that Taiwan's reunification with China is inevitable. Listen to this.
The reunification of the motherland is a historical inevitability. Compatriots on both sides of the Taiwan Strait should be bound by a common sense of purpose and share in the glory of the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation.
And on top of that, Xi Jinping urged the CCP workers to strengthen the patriotic and pro-unification forces in Taiwan and oppose the separatist acts of Taiwan independence. But how likely is that with Lai Ching-te in power? He is for sure not going to deliver what China wants, and that is enough for China to justify an escalated response. Just to put it simply, tensions are expected to rise further in the Taiwan Strait. It has already started, in fact. Xi Jinping has said in the past that Beijing is not preparing for a war, at least for now, but he has never ruled out the use of force. Will Lai Ching-te's ascension to presidency fuel the fire? It seems quite likely, especially at a time when two wars are already raging on. The threat cannot be ruled out. The Russia-Ukraine war is going to hit the 2-year mark. The Israel-Hamas war has spilled across West Asia. Now, Iran and Pakistan are also exchanging fire. The fear of the Chinese invasion of Taiwan seems larger than ever. Can the world afford yet another war? And moving on for now, not all wars are fought on the battlefield. Some, you see, are fought inside your head. Those who serve their country in the war zone don't come back home without baggage. US war veterans are living and breathing examples of this. In the last 1 year, close to 50,000 American war veterans and former service members sought emergency suicide prevention care. Yes, a whopping 50,000. That's the number that the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs has reported. You think that's bad? There's more. In November last year, the VA released its annual National Veteran Suicide Prevention Report for the year 2021. The report showed that nearly 6,400 veterans lost their lives to suicide. In the year 2020, the figure stood at just 114. Can you imagine? The number increased more than 50 times. 2021 was the first full year of the COVID-19 pandemic. There was greater financial strain, housing instability, higher anxiety, depression levels, also barriers to healthcare. And here comes the more troubling aspect. Yes, there is more. That same year, there was also an increase in firearm availability, and 72% of veteran suicides involved firearms. What else can you expect? We are talking about a country whose abortion laws are tighter than firearm possession. We are also talking about a country which is expert in waging wars and running away when the situation gets out of hand. We, of course, don't intend to be insensitive towards the veterans. Far from it. If anything, the veterans are the victims of America's actions. And let me tell you this, it's not just the soldiers who fought on the battlefield, it's also their families, of course. Fighting a war, you see, does not inflict trauma on just the soldier. It creates ripple effects. All those around the soldier, friends, family members, loved ones, also end up suffering. And the US is not alone, by the way. Have a look at Ukraine. The soldiers are not only fighting the Russian army, they are fighting trauma, PTSD, nightmares, anxiety, guilt. There aren't going to be any winners. Those who died are gone. Those left behind are suffering in their own ways. Ukrainian soldiers seeking mental health care are only getting it so that they can return to the battlefield. The Ukrainian army's goal is not to heal the soldiers, but to rehabilitate them enough so that they can fight. I'm not the one saying that. Psychological experts in Ukrainian ranks have said this themselves. They say that anything more than this is not possible in the current circumstances. But what happens when the storm settles? When wars are over and the soldiers return home? Of course, they will not be the same as they left. There will be sleepless nights, nightmares, flashbacks of the war zone, PTSD. They may even struggle in fostering close relationships. And the US has been a part of many wars. We won't even go that back in time. Let's just consider the last century. There was the Spanish-American War, the two World Wars, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Desert Storm. Millions fought in the wars. Hundreds of thousands died. Those who survived are living with the trauma. What happens to them? There is no denying that the US is trying to help them. It has a few policies in place, of course, to provide emergency mental health care. But is that enough is the question. Isn't prevention better than cure? And in an era riddled with financial uncertainties, gold reserves are more crucial than ever. Which countries in the world have the largest gold reserves? Why is this significant? Our next report getting you the answers. Have a look.
In times of economic instability, gold stands as a beacon of stability, instilling confidence in a nation's financial health. The mere presence of gold reserves bolsters currency stability. Diversification plays a crucial role. Gold is a tangible asset which enables countries to mitigate risks tied to fluctuations in the value of other assets. Which are countries with the largest gold reserves? Here's the list. The United States, topping the charts with a staggering 8,133.46 tons of gold. Germany securing the second place with 3,352.65 tons. Italy having 2,451.84 tons. France not far behind with 2,436.88 tons in its kitty. Russia showcasing its might with 2,332.74 tons. China commanding attention with 2,191.53 tons. Switzerland holding 1,040 tons. Japan crafting its economic strength, retaining 845.97 tons. India ranking 9th, yet impressive with 800.78 tons. The Netherlands rounding out the top 10 with 612.45 tons. India ranks ahead of countries like Saudi Arabia and the UK. What is also interesting when it comes to gold in India is the amount of bullion households own. Reports from 2023 state that Indian households possess a whopping 21,000 tons of gold. But why is having gold reserves so crucial for countries anyway? The most important reason behind countries stockpiling gold is that it is a stable storehouse of value. This precious metal has historically bolstered the value of a country's currency. Many nations view gold reserves as a way to maintain their currency's stability. A strong backup in times of economic uncertainty. Some countries even utilize gold for settling trade imbalances. The precious metal can serve as collateral for loans, too. Diversification is another reason. By holding gold, nations diversify their portfolio. Plus, the price of gold and the US dollar have an inverse relationship. When the dollar weakens, gold rates spike. During economic uncertainty, too, gold's value increases. For instance, when the Russia-Ukraine war began, the price of gold saw a spike. The same happened at the start of Hamas-Israel war. In other words, gold acts as a hedge in such crises. It is a critical tool for central banks to protect their reserves during market volatility.
More than ever, Europe's policy as far as immigration is concerned is governed by double standards. Across Europe, from Poland to France, governments are trying to discriminate between those they want to welcome, who they wish to integrate, and who they believe don't deserve to stay. They want them to be sent back. On Wednesday, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak survived a key test of his leadership. The UK PM succeeded in fending off right-wing rebels to win a crunch parliamentary vote on his contentious plan to send migrants to Rwanda. The bill is the British leader's answer to a UK Supreme Court ruling late last year that deporting asylum seekers to Kigali is illegal under international law. The latest legislation, if passed, would compel the judges to treat Rwanda as a safe third country. It would also give the UK ministers powers to disregard sections of international and British human rights legislation. London has already paid Kigali €280 million since the ex-Prime Minister Boris Johnson first announced the plan in April 2022. Sunak has pledged to slash record levels of regular migration and stop the asylum seekers crossing from France to Britain in small boats. He insists that the Rwanda bill is essential to deter migrants from considering travelling to the UK via unauthorized routes. But the proposal has reopened the splits between the right-wingers and the moderates in the ruling party not seen since the wranglings over what Brexit should look like following the 2016 referendum. Around 30,000 asylum seekers crossed the English Channel on rudimentary vessels last year. 5 died while trying to make the journey this past weekend itself. Hundreds were reportedly picked up from the freezing waters and brought ashore on Wednesday. Despite the sufferings and the spotlight on migrants' pain, the scene in Europe is familiar. Migrants flock to the gates of the continent and reception centres are overwhelmed. The right screams invasion, the left is split, European capitals shift responsibility to each other, and then everyone moves on until the next so-called crisis. While Rishi Sunak is going all out to deliver on his Stop the Boats pledge, let's just take a look at what is happening in Germany. Germany has nearly 2 million unfilled job vacancies. The EU's largest economy is facing a significant workforce shortage, especially in IT, renewable energy, construction, engineering, medical sectors. Businesses are struggling to fill these posts owing to the acute labor shortage. You see, labor shortage has been a persistent problem in Germany. In fact, over the last few years, several sectors have witnessed a major labor shortage, primarily due to an aging population. The COVID-19 pandemic only worsened the problem, but it seems that instead of upskilling the people, those who want to migrate for a better life, Europe is consumed by politics. Let's just go back to the UK. Reports suggest Nigel Farage is gunning to make the upcoming UK election a referendum on mass migration. A YouGov survey found voters who backed the Tories in 2019 have little faith in Sunak's ability to deal with immigration. Just 35% say they trust Sunak on the issue. That's far behind the 54% who trust Nigel Farage, the honorary president of the Reform UK party. Reform UK, the latest upstart political party Farage founded, is fast gaining support. Created 2 years ago, Reform UK is a reincarnation of the Brexit Party, which itself was the successor to the UKIP, the Eurosceptic party founded by Farage in the 1990s. In fact, polls suggest current Conservative voters would be more favourable towards reform with Farage as the leader. Conservative MPs and strategists believe even a small surge in support for reform would skim off thousands of potential Tory voters and deprive the party of scores of battleground seats. Some analysts say disillusioned Conservative voters are swinging en masse to reform. And such an outcome could turn an already expected Labour victory into a landslide. There is disquiet among the Conservatives as Farage seemingly surges, as Sunak continues to battle through a nightmare spell in which the UK recorded the highest net migration figures on record. We now explore the Israel Defense Forces' alleged misapplication of the Hannibal Directive. In the ongoing Israel-Hamas war, it's a situation sparking serious debate over military operations and ethical standards. Let's just break this down for you. The Hannibal Directive was developed by the IDF's Northern Command, specifically by military officers Yossi Peled, Gabi Ashkenazi, and Yaakov Amidror, in 1986. Its aim essentially was to prevent the capture of Israeli soldiers by enemy forces. If a soldier was about to be captured, this directive allowed the military to use very strong actions to stop the capture, even if it meant the soldier might get hurt or killed. And the logic behind the directive was to deter the enemy forces from attempting to capture the IDF soldiers. After all, these soldiers would be less valuable as bargaining chips if they were at the risk of being killed or injured during a rescue attempt. Notably, the Hannibal Directive was formulated without consulting legal experts. It's a controversial method, often misunderstood and misapplied operational order. The directive has reportedly been used in Israel's conflict with Hamas. And one example is the incident that took place in Kibbutz Be'eri. Here, Hamas was holding hostages at the Cohen family home. The group released Yasmin Porat, one of the hostages, during this episode. The Israeli police anti-terror unit questioned her about the terrorists. She told them that there were about 40 of them and 14 civilian hostages. In what appeared to be an action in line with the Hannibal Directive, an Israeli tank reportedly fired 2 shells at the house. All the remaining hostages in the house were killed as per reports, all but one, Hadass Dagan. Hadass Dagan and Yasmin Porat were the only 2 survivors from the incident. Another distressing incident occurred along the Israel-Gaza border. IDF personnel received orders to prevent hostages being taken into Gaza by force if necessary, and reports suggest IDF helicopters targeted vehicles attempting to enter Gaza. There have been unconfirmed reports of civilian casualties. Asa Kasher, philosopher and author of the IDF's Code of Conduct, has demanded scrutiny of the Hannibal Directive, citing this very incident as an example. In fact, in a recent local media interview, he expressed deep concern over the Hannibal Directive's use, highlighting the lack of legal and ethical grounds for harming Israeli civilian citizens, regardless of their status as soldiers or civilians. Kasher raises questions about the Hannibal Directive's application. In the action that took place at the Cohen family home, he points out the directive's varied interpretations and its potential misapplication in operations, asserting that the directive in no form justifies harming Israeli civilians. Calls for an immediate investigation echo loudly. The families of the victims are demanding answers, supported by Kasher's urgent plea, criticizing the IDF's decision to postpone the investigation. Kasher has also asked whether a misconceived understanding of the Hannibal Directive was invoked in the Gaza incident. And that's not all. Asa Kasher calls for a radical change in the military culture. He emphasizes that dying for one's country is not a noble act. Quote unquote, it's bad to die for our country. That's what he declared. Every soldier needs to understand this critical message, according to him. Looking for opportunities to die, according to him, is contrary to military ethics. Soldiers may face situations requiring them to risk their lives. However, actively seeking danger goes against the core values and ethics, as per Kasher. Kasher's stance challenges the current military mindset, you see. He urges a shift from self-sacrifice to preserving life. Prioritizing life and human values, according to him, is paramount. And while the world is in the middle of 2 raging wars, while concerns are growing, so is their impact. From eggs to gems, the impact is visible in multiple ways all around us, across sectors. I know what you're wondering here. Why am I talking about eggs specifically? Because Russia, you see, is in a fix. How is that related to eggs, you ask? Well, egg prices in the country are rising to the extent that the Russian President Vladimir Putin had to personally apologize for the crisis. You heard that right. You see, it all boils down to the impact of the war. Let's just break this down for you. The price of eggs has been a growing concern there. In fact, the price increased over 40% last year. How is Moscow dealing with this? the government will be exempting over 1 billion eggs, 1.2 billion to be precise, from import duty in the first half of this year. In fact, Russia has asked its neighbor Kazakhstan for help. It wants the country to supply more eggs to the retailers. And this, by the way, is just one part of the story as far as the impact is concerned. The wars are also affecting the precious gems industry in India. How exactly? You see, the thing is, both Russia as well as Israel are crucial sources as far as India's diamond imports are concerned. And which is why the wars are making their impact felt on this industry. And you know why this is extremely significant? Because India is a major player as far as the diamond industry is concerned. In case you were not aware, a huge chunk of the world's rough diamonds are cut and polished in India. How major? 90%. You heard that right. The country's overall gross exports of cut and polished diamonds, in fact, fell 9.78% in dollar terms during the April 2022 to March 2023 period. This is as per India's Gem and Jewelry Export Promotion Council. There has also been a decline in the demand from the developed nations. And the global economic slowdown has not helped. This report cites remarks from the managing director of a Gujarat-based company focused on jewelry exports and diamond trading, who talks about the downturn in the work, with exports decreasing about 30 to 35% over the past 7 months. While there have been challenges, there is also reason for optimism. The report also quotes the chairman of the Gem and Jewelry Export Promotion Council, who says that the industry made a strong comeback in November 2023 with an impressive 11.44% growth in overall gem and jewelry exports. But the overall exports for April to November were 19% lower than the same period of 2022 as per the report. These indicators are strong reminders of the impact that the wars are having on us and how our world is changing as a result of the rising tensions and conflicts. There is a silent epidemic which is taking over the world. It's to do with heart attacks. In fact, they're becoming a common trend now, unfortunately. And in a shocking incident, an 18-year-old college student died from a heart attack in India. The incident occurred at a coaching class in the state of Madhya Pradesh. Madhav, a resident of Indore, was studying for the Madhya Pradesh Public Service Commission. The young boy collapsed suddenly due to severe chest pain and lost his life due to a heart attack. This is what is called a silent heart attack. And in fact, silent heart attacks are becoming common, especially in India. They target especially those who are relatively young. Just last year, several news stories of men and women suffering a heart attack while working out went viral. What does that mean? And are you at risk? The American College of Cardiology has studied the prevalence of silent heart attacks and found that global death counts increased from 12.4 million in 1990 to 19.8 million in 2022. And this reflects that the global population is facing environmental behavioral risks when it comes to these threats. And in India, the National Crime Records Bureau has observed that nearly 57% of sudden deaths in India were due to silent heart attacks. In the year 2022, such heart attacks claimed over 30,000 lives in India. Just in the state of Gujarat, 80% of the heart attack deaths were recorded in the age group of 11 to 25. And in the South Indian state of Karnataka, a record number lost their lives due to sudden heart attacks, the numbers speaking for themselves. The threat of silent heart attacks is here, and it's real. Let me just tell you then about the signs of silent heart attacks that you should always watch out for. Feeling excessively tired or worn out after plenty of rest. Mild discomfort or pressure in the chest that comes and goes. Feeling breathless, especially during physical activity or without exertion. Gastrointestinal symptoms like mild nausea, stomach pain, indigestion. Perspiring without any apparent reason, especially in cold temperatures or during rest. Discomfort in parts of the body like the jaw, neck, arms, back or stomach. Feeling faint, dizzy or experiencing unexplained lightheadedness. Disruptions in the sleep patterns causing insomnia, frequent awakenings or sudden and significant changes in sleep quality. Feelings of anxiety, unease or a sense of impending doom. And general weakness or aching sensations in the upper body, including the arms, shoulders or upper back. All these could be glaring signs of an impending silent heart attack. Let me also tell you about a few preventive measures and good practices to keep a silent heart attack distant. Smoking is one of the leading causes of heart attacks across the world. If someone in your household smokes, encourage them to quit. Limit alcohol consumption as well. It can raise blood pressure and increase cardiomyopathy, so put the bottle back. Choose good nutrition. A healthy diet is one of the best weapons you have to fight heart disease. Reduce your intake of saturated fat. Avoid trans fat. And get moving to avoid the buildup of high blood cholesterol. Lower your high blood pressure. High blood pressure is a major risk factor for strokes. Cut down on salt as well to maintain optimal blood pressure. Be physically active, sit less, move more. At least 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity physical activity can keep a heart attack at bay. So keep a tab on your health, stay active, educate everyone around you about silent heart attacks and the dangers that they pose to us. And on that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. This is me, Molly Gambhir, signing off. Thanks very much for watching, leaving you with Gravitas Images.
India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe,